One big joke. It's a fucked up world. Here we are in. I ain't going nowhere.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Reason Reborn, and apologies for missing a week. I know it's been a while since we missed one, but I have not been feeling well. I'm feeling better, and I'm feeling very, very patriotic, as you can see by my picture. I am here with Green Lantern, soon to be Yellow Lantern Sinestro, aka Cardiac Sumo. How are you, sir?
You can't tell me the Yellow Lantern isn't a look. I'm just
those costumes are in some ways kind of better.
As you can see, I'm so against DC that I couldn't even be patriotic today. So I had to, so against Marvel, I should say. I couldn't even be patriotic like Black. So we're going Green Lantern.
Yes. So what you guys are going to get is a bunch of Pepsi speeches. So if you don't like Pepsi speeches, then you need to get the hell away from here. And some of you who've watched the whole Falcon and the Winter Soldier thing, you know what we're talking about. Maybe we'll talk about it later. I don't know. I don't know if I feel like yelling too much as I'm still recovering. But then again, I can yell at stupid people for having like stupid woke takes. It's a preview of the yelling people. Anyway, so been an interesting time. Of course, we won't go back to last week's events because this week's events were interesting enough in itself. Good Lord. So we got the verdict to the Derek Chauvin case, the police officer who was charged with 3 different counts in the murder of George Floyd. He was convicted of all 3 accounts, thankfully. And his sentencing will come soon. He's facing upwards to 40 years. Mind you, I believe the sentence would accumulate to a little bit more than that, but they say 40 years because you only need to do a certain amount of your time to be paroled. I believe the 40 years will be the maximum time he would have to do before he could be paroled. So, at least in the state of Minnesota. And, kind of brought a sigh of relief to people. A lot of people were expecting, of course, for him to get off, like so many others have in the past. So what are your feelings on this situation? What was your reaction, by the way?
I remember being a bit leading up to that. I remember hearing talk that, if he isn't convicted, if he isn't found guilty, I should say, what the societal backlash to that would be. And I was thinking more about that socially because, last year we had, what's the word here? People protesting. Sorry. My brain was still back at, the Capitol attack, and I was about to say rioting, and I couldn't think of the word, but we had, protesting for Black Lives Matter last year. A lot of it in the streets. It was a big thing, still is, really. And, you look at that, the years leading up prior to that, from, kneeling at football games, all that stuff. I just remember thinking, like, this could be a bit of a crossroads. Like, I'm not saying we were going to get rioting in the streets, murder, or anything that crazy if he got off, but it could have been very bad if he did. You know what I mean? Like, that was part of the tension to me, is not just to see if justice would be served, which it was important to me that it was, because it was a very, obvious case. And maybe we could talk some about the logic in that in a minute, but like, you could feel the nation just sort of on edge about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if it's just the nature of my social media feeds right now or something, but I didn't see too many people like, too many serious people, as far as the general population being like, yeah, we need to protect this guy. He's a cop. Like, I didn't see that level of, Blue Lives Matter for him. I don't know if I'm just not, again, I could just not be seeing it because you never know like how your social media is being filtered unless you pay close attention or maybe you look at other people's.
Yeah, I would guess that you're not seeing it and that you're not seeking it either. Because I'm pretty sure if you did, like, you probably would see a lot of stuff that would like drive you insane.
Probably. But that was part of my thought process too, is I was somewhat just like looking to see if it was going to be there because I don't know that it's weakened or anything like that, but it definitely felt more loud and proud and noticeable. At least back when I'm sorry, the football player.
Oh, you're talking about Colin Kaepernick?
Yeah, sorry. As you guys can tell, I'm not the biggest football guy, but back when there was that kneeling and then debate about disrespecting the anthem and all that crap. Essentially, when Blue Lives Matter and All Lives Matter like really started that sort of counter energy toward Black Lives Matter, it felt far more energetic from then and like the next couple of years on. And I definitely still see people who do it, but I don't know if they got tired or if I'm just seeing them a little less.
I think you're seeing it a little less.
If I am seeing less, I guess I wonder why. So, and
I think it's maybe a mix of both. Because I've seen some stuff in response to the verdict that was like, it shouldn't have been that way. And during the case, you would see people agree with some of the testimony that was given, or at least the defense that was given by his lawyers about, maybe he was sick, maybe it was the drugs, blah, 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 and things like that. Stuff of that nature. I do think though around this, it's a really hard situation to keep that energy. Like with the protests, it's easier to focus on. I think that's the thing. Protests, I guess, are easier to pick on, and it just reminded me of something else that I need to bring up, that I need to look up. I forgot about, but seeing people in the streets and all of that. Protest has always been an easy means to pick at, especially if something gets set on fire or something gets smashed. Then it's just like, oh, see, blah, 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 that and that. But with this case, it was very, very hard to do so because one, the defense was just horrible. Your defense is bad when the doctor that you bring in to help make the argument about, illness says, all that being said, looking at this situation as it is, yeah, it's highly unlikely that he died randomly because he was high or he had medical conditions. Like, it's obvious that this guy was like asphyxiated. So it's not an easy target for them, or it's not a target that even they can come up with the ridiculous for. They'll come up with ridiculous for a lot of things. I mean, hell, we just saw like recently Ted Cruz come up and say, like, when in complaints to the idea of adding more judges being brought to the table by some senators and Congress people, where he was like, yo, we would never do anything like that. Do you think we would ever try to unbalance the Supreme Court in our favor? No, we wouldn't do stuff like that. He sat there and he continually said that this is a disgrace and that we would never do that. Knowing that we're looking at a Supreme Court now that is the way it is because Mitch McConnell said so many years ago, as long as Obama was in office, there will not be a Democratic nomination of the Supreme Court. And then when Obama left, he was like, now we can pack the courts the way we want. They came out and said that they were going to do that shit. And then they did it. So, yeah, they can find ridiculous arguments. Just like I said, the defense attorneys kind of made a ridiculous argument, which is their job. I'm not knocking them for that, but this was just one of those situations where even that their level of ridiculousness didn't seem fitting for them, I guess. You know?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Like there are targets that are more or less difficult to attack and that get people more or less excited. And I know that might sound to some people like I kind of was skating away from the question about how did it make me feel, but I don't think I was. A lot of people, like I had friends who were waiting, on pins and needles, waiting to see what the verdict was going to be, and I think I was just more focused on what I'm feeling in a more wide social context. Because I do think it matters that uh, Mr. Floyd gets justice because what happened to him was ugly and horrific. Like we saw him strangled on TV for what was it, 9 minutes? So like no good reason. The defense was idiotic. Again, they had to try their best, but it is hard to defend a stupid case. It was a very obvious open and shut case. If he had been found innocent or something, I would have been pissed. But I guess I was willing to just kind of wait and see on that before I had too much of an emotional attachment to it in itself. It was just more focused on a wider context, if you will.
So it's kind of similar, I think, to me because I wanted him to be guilty so that because it's what it should have been. And I do feel sick and tired of seeing, these cops get off by just randomly killing people of color for no reason. But when the day of the verdict was coming, I actually I think I tweeted out that I was just hoping that either his family gets justice, and if not, then hopefully we can get to this thing with as little damage as possible. Because that was my big thing. What it was a sense of relief because, like I told a friend of mine, it's sad. I was kind of relieved because now we don't have to have any protests or riots, and you know, my main concern was I don't want to see no more of my people or anybody end up dying as a result of the note not guilty. Like I didn't want to see that chaos. So it's a bittersweet moment because it's good. Now we can just go about moving to the next thing and not have to worry about curfews and seeing police gas and strike people and all this shit. We don't have to possibly have another Kyle Rittenhouse show up on the scene. Things like that. That's not going to happen right now. Thank God. At least with this case. So, yeah.
I think it left me in I don't want to say negative place because I guess in my mind, as I was thinking through what society is looking at the moment, how that was going to impact us culturally, I just thought, one of two things is going to happen. Either he's going to be found innocent and that's going to cause a shit ton of problems, or what happened, he's going to be found guilty. And I didn't feel like a lot of people celebrated, were crying, were happy. Like I was happy that, Floyd's family got some justice and, what was supposed to happen happened. But I didn't feel any happiness outside of that because I was like, we still have a fucked up policing system in the country. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's not to say that you can't be happy. I mean, I'm not trying to shit on anybody who was happy with this, but I couldn't really indulge in the same level of relief and happiness as everybody else because I was like,
no.
I mean, the mere fact that this was even a question as to which way this case would go is kind of part of the problem.
No, I know exactly how you feel because the same friend I was talking to, we were sharing the same sentiments. It's yeah, again, thankfully his family gets at least this bit of peace. Sadly, they're never going to see him again, but at least they know the person who took his life isn't going to be walking around here, free, So they have that, like, they have a bit of closure to this for them, and I'm happy for them. But yeah, I mean, shit. We just saw, like, within an hour of the verdict, there was another police shooting that got everybody riled up, and we have to remember there was a 13-year-old kid that was shot unarmed less than a week before the verdict, and there was something else that I think I just saw where somebody got shot unarmed. So it's just like in Virginia, somebody got shot unarmed in Virginia 2 days ago. So it's
I might
like,
have missed that story, but yeah. So when you asked me like how I was feeling, I kind of like confusingly muddled through my more general societal focus. I think that was part of why I was less attached to that particular case and more thinking about the wider context, because I care about that case in the sense that you want justice to be served and you want the family to get what they deserve and all that stuff. But like, I didn't think it was going to have a huge effect one way or the other on like the overall. Well, I shouldn't say that, because there are some legislations that have been inspired by this. I shouldn't go that far to say that it won't have an effect, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's not, it's an instance of the problem. It's not the entirety of the problem, you know what I mean?
yeah, it's like, it's not even an instance of the problem to me, because it's just the right thing to do. If we are supposed to uphold our justice system, then it should be properly administrated, which is, it's clear that this guy killed this guy. You kill someone, you go to fucking jail. A, B to C. But there still lies, like you said, so many problems within the system and the way that things are done within law enforcement that still need to be taken care of and worked on and discussed. Yeah,
I think that point too was, again, part of my maybe emotional distancing, because if you recall when we were talking about the possibly impeaching then President Trump, I feel my emotions were a little, left and right about it. But I had said, regardless of how we feel about it, we should impeach him merely because we should impeach him. Like, the law says what it says. He did what he did. We should do it. We should do it because it's the right thing. Because I think at the time, and maybe you and I were having like some debates about the politics around that, or how that would affect this culture and all that shit. But like, I was like, either way, even if I thought it was gonna have like a negative political consequence, we should still fucking do it because it is the rule. You know what I mean? Like, it is the right thing to do. And I think that was part of the same way I felt here. It's like, regardless of whatever cultural effect it was gonna have, he killed that fucking guy for no good reason. So he should go to, like, I look at law, politics, all that stuff is kind of a machine. I expect it to work in certain ways. If it doesn't work right, I'm going to get pissed. But like, I just have an implicit expectation that it's going to function somewhat logically. And then when it doesn't, I'll get angry.
See, here's the problem, though. You sitting here talking all this logic and the right thing to do thing. I'm thinking you have an affinity for some Pepsi speeches, sir.
No, I'm a Coke guy.
Same difference. They're all the same.
But I just point that out because I saw a lot of people, like, what's the term? Taking extreme pleasure in Chauvin, getting convicted. Like, yeah, fuck him, got him, guilty, yes. And I was like, I don't know. I couldn't really partake as much in that sort of celebrating nature of this guy getting what I do think he deserves. I was just like, he deserved it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's what's supposed to happen. You know what I mean? Like, it's this, I don't know.
Yeah, he did deserve it. He fucking knelt on the guy, begging for his mom, screaming, telling him he couldn't breathe. And he sat there like it was okay. Now, he's a horrible person. and he deserves to be punished. And so, and his, you know, constituents who was there who didn't react, whatever the law says that they are, you know, punishable by, they should be punished too, because you sat there and you let that man kill another man. You are a disgrace to your uniform and to what, you know, they say law enforcement is supposed to be. Get the fuck out of here.
I will say, I think I was more emotional leading up to the case or leading up to the verdict, you know, during the trial than I was at the actual verdict, because there was a lot of, you know, like children, for example, being giving their testimony. A lot of, I think that like several people expressed feeling guilt, like bystanders, about not doing more.
That guy who was in the store who made the call, the 911 call.
Right.
He's, you know, he gave an emotional speech.
Racked with guilt over that. You know, we all know about I'm sorry, her name escapes me, but the girl who took the video footage that we all saw, you know, her wondering if she could have done more. It's like, that is not a clear situation. Because, you know, you're talking about the prospect of like impeding people who have guns and are representatives of the law and shit. It's like, we don't really have you know, maybe somebody with better legal knowledge than me could make the point, but like, I don't know if we have any good way of saying like, all right, this cop's going too far, so now we as citizens shall intervene. Like, I don't know that there's any good legal protection for that. That makes it sound like you're only worried about being sued. I just mean like, I've never really heard of us talk about what we do in person if a cop gets out of control. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what, like if I was sitting there and like a cop was like abusing somebody physically, am I just allowed to stop them? I assume there's like some legal structure to stop me from doing that.
Yeah,
even if I do it for the right reasons, I don't know if, you know, there's any protection of culpability for me.
Which is why when people kept saying like, why was everybody just standing around not doing anything? Why didn't somebody run over there and try to stop them? It's like, it ain't like a regular fight.
Right.
It's not like, you know, I see you and another guy fighting and I run in to break it up. You know, these are police officers. You're going to come at them and then it's going to just add more attention, which is why it was fine that little girl recorded it. It's actually great that she recorded it, because at least, so if just imagine if that shit wasn't recorded, the story that would have been told.
Well, they did tell inaccurate stories.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
But I guess I've been thinking a lot lately about police reform, what we should do. And that question kind of crossed my mind where, you know, to your point, if it was just like a couple of people, non-police officers there, and then nobody intervened, we would condemn them. But with the police, it's more complicated because we, as a society, have police as people who have a right to use force in order to, you know, uphold justice and shit. Like, they're kind of a different set of citizens than the rest of us. So it makes the idea of interacting with them a much different prospect. And that's why I said, if somebody has any legal knowledge about this kind of thing, I'd love to hear it, because I don't know that we have any hard, fast legal logic for how to deal with that.
Yeah, no. No, if you would have
obviously
you would have been arrested.
The implicit assumption should be that if the police officer is using force, it's justified. So, like, you know.
Yeah, it's a mess. That's why we need to like get something. We need to get this whole situation straightened out. Our law enforcement.
That's not to say I think you should be able to just like walk up to police officers and start fist fighting them either. But like, I don't know what the answer for that kind of thing is. But,
yeah, no. Which is why it's just like a lot around our law enforcement and our, you know, justice system that really just it's a hard discussion, but it's a discussion that needs to be had, and it's something that needs to be taken care of. Definitely. But yeah,
When
at
my
least
dictatorship
you
starts,
have
I'll
it.
get somebody to work on that.
Uh, I guess. Good luck on that one. I mentioned the shooting that happened afterwards. The young lady, I forget her name. Let me pull it up really quick.
I was gonna guess, but I was like, nah, because I kind of wanted to say Michaela, but like,
It's kind of close. Micaiah Bryant.
hmm.
She It's funny because when I pulled up the article, I didn't know that was the crux of it. The fight started over housework. Interesting. Anyway, 16-year-old Micaiah Bryant was shot by Columbus police in an incident where police officer came upon a confrontation between her and someone else. She was seen wielding a knife, and the police officer saw her go towards someone. There's videotape that shows this, and the police officer shot her 4 times, killing her. She died when they took her to the hospital. Was pronounced dead, which sparked a lot of outrage, outcry, and people were just really, really angry. Um, could have been any more worse timing, especially since, like I said, it came within an hour or two of the uh, Derek Chauvin verdict. It was like, from happiness to sadness, all in like one fell swoop for a lot of people. A lot of people were very, very outraged. LeBron James even tweeted a picture of the officer saying, "You're next," because he was outraged. He of course took it down once he
I missed
realized
that.
how what
That's
this.
super irresponsible.
Yeah, and he even came out. He publicly said, like, yeah, he shouldn't have did it, and he should have had more contacts and stuff like that. So he didn't shy away from saying that he was wrong from doing it. To be fair to him, But at the same time, it's kind of like the conversation I had with you. I sort of understand it because it's that raw, visceral reaction that we're having way too much now. Because 9 times out of 10, when this shit happens, it is in the wrong way. Such as, again, think about the like highs and the lows of this thing. We're less than a week removed from a 13-year-old kid giving himself up, being shot in the chest and killed, to getting a guilty verdict for a cop who killed someone for possibly having a counterfeit $20 bill and choking him to death. And then you go straight to another cop shot another person. And again, part of it is, of course, media irresponsibility because, of course, everybody wants to get the story out. So it's like, black kid shot by cop, everybody's going to go fucking wild as soon as you see that like thing. And I think I was telling you how, like, I have to admit, like, I was very, very pissed that night because I was just like, yo, this is tiring. You get tired of this stuff. And then once I started to read more, I was like, yo, this is a fucked up situation. I don't know, like,
Did you
what
catch
was she
the
thinking?
footage?
I didn't look at the footage. I just read about it. I don't know if I want to, like, so
I
you've seen the
caught it.
footage, so
I think it like stops like right as the shots are fired, but I did see it. It's a little hard to there's a lot going on there. Like I have to look at it again. I almost swear like, somebody stumbles over. She has
right.
the other girl like runs against the car. The other girl comes with a knife while she's against the car. I think some guy kicked somebody else that was on the ground. Like it was pretty fucking hectic. I just asked if you'd seen it because like even looking at that, I was like, he like just arrived and shit was popping off immediately. It just again, a little hard to see. I had to watch it a couple times. It seemed to be like she was going at her with a knife. Like
right, I read that and I've heard like his account was like nobody was responding to him, nobody was saying anything. He kept saying like, "What's going on? What's going on?"
Yeah, like he pulls up and he gets out of the car and they're like, I think they're standing in like the driveway or something. He like tries to get their attention. There's already like some kind of commotion going on. I don't know how this other person got, I guess she got knocked over or something toward him. Then somebody else, like, I think he must have seen the knife or something because he pulled out his gun, and like other people start to move. She seems to be going at the girl against the car with the knife. So that girl who looked like she was about to get stabbed is like pinned up against the car, so she can't really move. And I think the girl's holding the knife kind of like this, going at her. I think some other person on the ground is getting kicked. So I don't know what to think about it. It did seem like a pretty hard thing to kind of think through that fucking fast. I'm watching this thing several times. I'm like, I don't know what I would have done here. Like,
Yeah.
because like if she was really, I assume she was trying to stab her. If that was the case, she was gonna get stabbed. She was not. Like if you see the imagery, like she was not in a position where she was like leaned up against the car, like trying to hold her hand out to stop it. Like, definitely would have been stabbed if that was gonna happen. If the girl wielding the knife truly had that intent, that was definitely going to happen.
And yeah, I do agree with the sentiment that he probably didn't have to shoot 4 times. He probably could have shot to wound, but I don't think they're really trained to wound when they shoot. I think they're honestly, which is kind of a weird thing. Like, you know, it's like what Shannon Sharp had said on his sports show, because they were talking about it. It was like, you talk to a lot of cops, when they're trained to shoot center mass. They're not looking to just wing somebody.
Well, sure. Although I would be surprised how much, I don't know how much gun training they get, but it's like, I wonder if they have the confidence in their aim to be able to do something like that either. Because as you're saying that, I'm like, I probably would try the same shot, because I don't know that I'm that confident that I could hit an appendage like that. A limb, I should say. Or even if I did, I would probably shoot multiple times to make certain I did.
Well, I mean,
disclaimer, I'm not a gun expert or anything like that.
And that's the thing. Like, these guys, they supposed to train like a certain amount of time. They do, because they want you to be accurate with your shots. They don't want you just to be busting off, because if you're just busting off, he could have hit like that girl who he was trying to save too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
More generally, I don't even touch this. It's such a fucking. There are cases like, like the Derek Chauvin thing that are just obviously inappropriate. You know what I mean? Or you guys know I came from Florida. I believe this is where this one story happened. It was a few years ago. There was a black man. I guess he worked at like some sort of mental health institution.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Helping one of the patients there, one of the people that go there. I don't know why the police came with. I can't remember. It was a couple of years ago, but the police arrived. The guy kind of just like lays out on the ground, displays that, shows that he has no intention of doing anything. And one of the officers shoots him. And I think he said something like, "Why did you do that?" As he's in pain and whatever. And the guy's like, "I don't fucking know." He didn't say fuck. He said, "I don't know." Like, I don't know if we even got an answer to that, because like many of these cases, they can bleed together and sometimes you don't see what the resolution was. But like, I just bring it up because like, it's one of these cases that I remember vividly at the time, because it's like, again, this was back during the height of like the all lives, Blue Lives Matter shit. I'm like, this is one of these cases that's like cut and fucking dry wrong. He clearly had nothing out. He was surrendering. Like there was no reason to hurt him at all. And this guy shot him. And when asked, he couldn't even present a reason. You know what I mean? And you do see these kind of cases where like, it's just totally irrational why they resorted to the kind of violence they did. Yeah. So that's one, category I see. And then there's this other category where part of the problem is, I think, the way we police certain crime, like traffic stops, for example. Some people have pointed out when they talk about defunding the police, or rather, reallocating funds. It's not really that necessary that you should say pull over somebody for expired registration. You know what I mean? Like, the state knows when your tags are going to expire because they issued your vehicle registration. They already fucking know that. they
they're
start
gonna send you
sending
that
the
bill in
bills.
the letter, be like, yo,
Right.
yours is not registered. Now, I guess they
It's
do
not
it
the
just
kind
to
of
give a
crime.
ticket because it
Sure.
helps their like quotas or whatever. Maybe I don't know, but
I mean, yeah,
it's
you could say
I agree with
driving.
you though. It's like there's no reason, or at least there's no reason to do so with any type of hostility or to find something. Like I could say, if I was a police officer, if I was to pull somebody over for that, I'd be like, "Yo, you know your tax expired. You better be careful. Somebody might fuck with you for real, for real. I'm not trying to fuck with you, but somebody's gonna fuck with you for real, for real." And
Right.
then
Like, I mean, you could say that driving with an expired registration is a crime, different, because you're doing it with something you shouldn't do. But like, my point is, there's certain, or to go back to the Chauvin thing, this idea of like the counterfeit 20, is that really something that warrants a bunch of police showing up for that? Like, we kind of call on the police to do all sorts of shit, even the shit that doesn't really make sense. And, they're going to show up there with their guns, their tasers, their all that shit. That's really what they're kind of for. You know what I mean? Like, and we just got to keep deploying them into these situations. Like, I remember when I was in college, I had a friend who I guess she was going through some mental anguish, and somebody called the police to perhaps save their life. Middle of the night, they come like banging on her door, flashing the lights, all this shit, being all aggressive. It's like, if you're going through mental health shit, at the time, dark thoughts, I'll say, that was a pretty traumatic experience for them. You know what I mean? It didn't help fucking at all that these people just showed up in the middle of the night.
yeah,
As though they were coming for battle. So I guess that second category I'm talking about there is like, violence happens in situations where, the crime or the concern, if you stop and thought about it, is it really worth even deploying personnel like them in the first place? It's like, you're shooting a bunny rabbit with a cannon, essentially.
yeah.
But then there's situations like this where there really are, if you take a side, I think it is appropriate to call the police when you have physical altercation, like what was happening here.
Yeah.
There are situations like this where the use of force is, if not obviously right, at least arguable. You know what I mean? Where it's not so cut and dry that he was dead wrong to do that, or that he was, doing out of excessive use of force or racism or whatever. Like, he arrived at within 5 seconds, somebody was lunging at somebody with a knife. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I
I mean, like I said, my only thing would be like 4 shots. I'm figuring like you kind of just squeeze and held down the trigger, relax, calm down. But
Sure.
I can't fucking just be like totally like, well, he shouldn't have done it, because it's a weird fucking situation. But it's why we have this like we have these visceral responses, because I'm glad you brought up the military guy who got pulled over. It's because every time there's an interaction with a person of color with police, it seems to be at a fucking extreme. So we are always expecting the extreme. And it's sad because this guy is probably going to get a lot of shit, and a lot of harm thrown his way. And I can say honestly, it's probably not warranted, because it's not like he came in. You can't necessarily say he came into the situation looking for trouble. Like, maybe he was a racist or something, but you can't, looking at the situation, try to be like compare this to Philando Castile,
Right. Like, you
George
could
Floyd, none of those
disagree with
things.
it, but you could understand like why he felt he needed to do that. But like,
Right.
the and this is why I talked earlier about like, the social sentiment about it, because I've felt for years, especially in the last few months, like everybody's really on edge, and the nature of some of these cases make them hard to talk about. So when I brought up that second category of, we're deploying police officers who use force for situations that don't warrant it. A good example, I think it was Dante Wright. What was it? Having fuck. I want to say it was like air fresheners or something in the car.
Oh yeah.
That, even to the extent that is
was it the military guy?
That was somebody else. No.
Because I think Dante Wright. See, and this is the sad part about it, people. It's happening so many times that I think we get the names mixed up. I think Dante Wright is the 13-year-old who got shot in Chicago. So I'm not sure what's the name of the kid.
Them up too.
Yeah.
Okay. so that's that, because I think we both mixed them up.
Yeah. But I know what you're talking about now. It was the kid.
The guy was like 20 years old in the car. It was the lady who thought she was pulling out her taser.
Yeah, that one. See? God damn.
But I guess my point is like, if that, I believe somebody could correct me wrong, that's why they originally pulled him over, because apparently that's not legal there. But think about the fact that we have an armed personnel to enforce a law that's stupid in the first place. You know what I mean? Like, that alone is already the start of a problem, is that you have somebody like that in order to enforce something that's stupid. And then I can't even remember what they were arresting him for. Why do you want to say it might have been?
Because he had a warrant out for unpaid fines.
There we go.
Why you got a warrant for unpaid fines? What the fuck?
I might be remembering wrong because I'm mixing up some of the cases, but I think there was some concern that maybe he didn't get the information for the fines in time or something like that. But I guess my point is like the nature of these issues do not warrant armed response in the first place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's one dimension of the issue. And then the second is when I talk about everybody being on edge, I start to worry, and I hate to even talk about it, but like, they're so on edge about it that they're not fair, or like they refuse to like note certain things. So in that case, I believe that guy, when they were trying to arrest him, I tried to hop back in his car. I don't think you should be shot and killed for that. No. But I think it was like Chris Hayes or something on CNN. I don't want, or MSNBC rather. I don't want to be too precise on who it was. But somebody was like describing this case, and he said something like, so he tried to remove himself from the situation, blah, blah, blah. He made it sound like it was an okay thing to do, that you can just decide to not be arrested. And you can't. I was like, we shouldn't just like skate by that like that's okay to do. But I also don't like saying that, because like if somebody hears me say that, they're going to think that I'm saying, oh, so she should have been shot. No, like you shouldn't be murdered for a resisting arrest either.
It shouldn't have been that situation, period. Because like you said, before, why are you having cops do these things anyway? Like, if she sees an air freshener in his thing, she could have easily they have computers in their cars. She could have easily just ran the plates and sent the information to the DMV, and the DMV sends him a fucking letter and be like, yo, dude, we documented you with this. It's a warning. Take him down. If someone sees you again and this is reported, we're going to send you a fine, blah, blah, blah. Or something.
I mean, theoretically, you have cameras on the car. Maybe just like take a shot to prove it, send it, and then indisputable. Like sometimes they're deployed for crimes that you shouldn't even stop people for. Like, but the reason I bring this up is like, because we're all so on edge about it, it makes some of the reporting irresponsible. And in that case, that was like a semi-minor thing, but I was like, I didn't like the way he said it, because it kind of implied that it was appropriate for the guy to try to resist arrest. That's not something worth dying, being killed over. I don't think she was not right in any universe. I remember you and I had a conversation. I was like, I explained like several reasons why she was fucking wrong for all of that. I was like, you bring it back to this case with this girl. I saw the headlines too, like 15-year-old black girl shot by a cop. And that was just like the headline. And I was like, that gave a really unfair framing of what happened there. Like, again, you could have the discussion about, maybe he shot too many times. Maybe he could have handled it without the gun. I'm not as convinced that he could have now that I've seen that footage, because he wasn't, because she was like, the girl was already on her with a knife, so he would have had to like close that distance. You know what I mean? So debatable. I'm not sure if he could have managed that even if he was trained, but
You know,
I see a lot of these times where like people, and we'll talk about these stories, and like often I'll shit on the police for either being too aggressive or just being incompetent. But I always get kind of annoyed because like sometimes you just kind of ignore what the victim in that case was doing in this situation as if it was okay, because they got an unfair, punishment, in a lot of cases death, right? It's like, I don't know. The reporting on it is yet kind of frustrating and weird.
Yeah, well, like in the case of the guy going back to his car, no, he shouldn't have probably did that.
Right. And again, not something to be killed over. I don't want anybody to get
you
the wrong
don't have
impression.
to pull. Yeah, that's the thing. She didn't have to pull her gun. She could have been like, stop, called, been back up, and be like, yo, we're gonna have to catch this guy or whatever. I think police need to stop reacting viscerally to quote unquote being disrespected. I think that's part of the problem. Because you're not in a position where you should react that way.
That is not a crime.
But it's generally the reason why they get this. It's just like going back to the guy, the military guy. Clearly, when he did not stop immediately, that even enraged the cop even more to act even extra. But dude explained to him, dude, I just wanted to be someplace well lit because I didn't feel safe. That's a reasonable fucking like thing to say. Sure. And that should have been like, okay, cool. Now let's go about this in a normal manner. No, the cop ramps up even more. That's part of the problem is these cops don't know how to, there's something with their selection of cops because they don't know how to properly like respond to the thing. It's one of the reasons why, again, we fucking got so mad over this latest one, because usually what it is it's an overreactive response to something that ends up in somebody's life being taken.
I mean, sometimes it's an incompetent or dumb one. I remember we had a conversation about the man who I guess was drunk in a fast food parking lot. The officers tried to arrest him.
Yeah.
They wrestled with him on the ground. I think they tried to use one of the tasers. It failed. Guy took the other taser, started to run off, and they shot him. I don't think he died, but
no, I don't think he died either.
I was talking about that story with another friend, and he got very upset. Like, they shot him in the back and blah blah blah. Like, this is the irresponsibility of reporting I was talking about, because I remember when we talked about it, I criticized those cops for being that incompetent, for like letting that situation get there in the first place.
Yeah.
But with that friend, I was like, hold on. I don't think that should have happened. That should have never gotten that far. But that dude resisted arrest, wrestled both of them on the fucking ground, stole one of their weapons to try to run with it. Like, we could still criticize the cops without like just completely fucking ignoring everything that led up to it.
Yeah, no, he was a dumbass, but he wasn't a dumbass that deserved to get shot.
Right. It's like, you don't have to just skate by it. And again, like, I think that the argument I had with that friend was like, you're making the reporting and him, it's like, you're making it sound like they just shot him because he was black out of nowhere. Like, if anything, they tried pretty hard to be non-lethal. And my big complaint with them was that they fucking failed miserably.
But they shouldn't have been lethal still. And this is where I think the like thing, though, that makes you like that corresponds it to being black is because, again, and I said this to you before, we've seen so many cases where people have done way worse things, been actually violent towards cops, pointed guns at cops, swung machetes at cops, and they found some way to like take care of the situation non-violently. Like when that guy started running away, clearly your dumb ass was mad because he just embarrassed you and you decided to shoot him because you're a fucking incompetent cop and you're probably racist, maybe or something like, because you didn't have to shoot him, but you clearly, in any aspect, you don't deserve to be a cop, and you deserve to be punished because you shouldn't be like, you shouldn't respond that way.
Sure, I was willing to consider the fact that he was escaping with a taser, but
yeah, he was escaping with a taser, but again, we've seen them let people escape with shotguns in their hands. I think the shotgun person should probably be shot and not the taser person. You know?
Yeah, if you have to make a call there, maybe I'm harsh enough to say you should shoot them both, but
and again, like, sure, you want to shoot, aim for someplace else. Like, I get it's hard to shoot, whatever. You're a trained professional. I'm sure you know how to aim.
I guess it makes the whole thing so weird to talk about because there's so many factors. There's, in some cases, just like being a racist or being an asshole, like the Chauvin case. Like that guy's like psychotic or something. I don't know what the fuck that dude's deal is, what you want to call that, but to simplify, let's just call it evil, I guess. Some people are just like totally incompetent, like they. And I remember I was talking to you about I think it was a podcast with Renner Gracie, one of the the Gracie family, the jiu-jitsu family. They talked about training cops, and I was like, I knew they didn't get much training, but I was like, I think he said something like 1 to 4 hours every year or two, for like physical training, like takedown shit like that. I'm like, bro, it's no wonder these motherfuckers are always so quick to grab their guns. They don't have any good, just non-lethal hand-to-hand combat training.
No, they don't.
Which, when you see some of these videos, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like the way they're fucking struggling on the ground. I shouldn't laugh, but I do remember sometimes I've seen videos where like, why did the cop do that? I'm like, look at this motherfucker. Did you think he was going to go Batman on that guy? He clearly can't fight. Clearly, you can look at him in the video and see that he cannot fight.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand the racial component to it too, because I think I mentioned this to you before, how there's always seemingly some weird myth that we are some supernatural beings that require much more effort.
I think in some cases, some of them are just blatantly racist. Like, it's not a subconscious thing. Some of them might just.
But I mean, that's a part of the racism, though, because yeah.
I'm not disputing that. I just want to point out because like we talk about it, but my point was, I think because you mentioned the selection process earlier, I worry that we don't vet some of these clear problem cases early, because somebody made the point that like, people who have maybe a white supremacist bent might be more drawn to that kind of profession. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Me and you had that discussion. No, I had a discussion with somebody else. Oddly enough, this pearl of wisdom came from the Jim Cornette podcast, where he was saying he was listening to this guy talk about white supremacy and, in particular, the skinhead movement. You're probably too young to remember the skinhead movement. I'm sure you heard of it, right?
I know what they are, but I can't say I've seen one that I would recognize.
Yeah, you haven't, because they pretty much aren't around, really. It was something that was more of a 80s, 90s, maybe early 2000s thing. And you kind of saw it fade out. And the guy who was talking, this white guy who he said was talking about it, was like, well, think about this. We pretty much kind of seem to have scared the idea of publicly being a skinhead off. But these people still have these same feelings. They still want to do some of the things that they were trying to do. And if you think about it, the police department is the perfect place for them to go, because it's the fact that it doesn't take much to be a cop in most places is an easy place for them to get in, to get the authority that they want, to get like the tools that they feel they need, and to hide behind that badge and do the things that they want to do and feel justified because they're a cop. It's an easy way to like hide from the law within the law. Yeah. And
Right. So, like, I didn't mean to cut off the point about the myth of Black Power, but I just want to point because sometimes we talk about it somewhat implicitly, and I do think I'm not saying like police departments are 99% KKK or something like that, but it is worth considering how much of it might be quite conscious racism. Is all I meant.
yeah. But no, I mean, even with the conscious racism, it's a part of that whole like African Americans strength and sad, but it's understandable because it goes back to slavery and how they've always looked at us. Remember, they never really looked at us as people. They looked at us as livestock, and you would breed livestock to be fast, strong, so they can do the most work the most efficiently and shit like that. And I guess as time has gone on, some of that has kind of transferred over to real life situations where it's like, yo, these people are fucking stronger, faster, look at sports like, goddamn, look at all these like huge, tall basketball players, all these black guys who can do all these amazing things. They all must be able to do these things and shit like that. Like the myth of every black person can run fast and shit and all that stuff. Like, that shit does carry over into other areas. And when you're
To be fair, I just told a story of a black dude overpowering two white men. So.
Yeah. And it wasn't a big black guy. It was a skinny black guy at that who was drunk. So, yeah. Damn, that's fucked up. You're not helping me with this argument, sir. Anyway. But no, I mean, but that's just the general, like, it's a part of the like problem, especially when you have these poorly trained people who have these mentalities that they have, and you're coupling all this together. It's just like it's a mix for disaster. It's like y'all got to be better. Like because a friend of mine, his cousin is a cop, and he was telling me his cousin tells him all the time. He's like, honestly, being a cop, you understand more from the inside. It's like these guys really have no idea what they're doing, and to be quite honest, a lot of them don't even care that they do or don't. They don't want to do what they're supposed to do. They're just there for like all the wrong reasons. And it's part of the reason why you have things so fucked up, because you're having people there who are there for just not for what the job is. They don't want to do their job. They just want the authority and the paycheck.
Certainly. I guess you said that person works in the force.
Yeah, he's an officer.
But I mean, you're having even them admit they don't know what the fuck they're doing. But it's like, why do we have so many people with guns that don't know what they're doing?
Exactly.
When I was listening to this podcast with that Gracie person, I was like, what do you mean they only trained? Like the training requirement is so fucking lax. I think he compared it to like, you need to train as a barber for longer before you get a barber license or whatever. Like
you know how long you fucking seriously. It's like you have to go to college, basically.
It's like I can't remember the exact phrase he used, but it's like that job is the job, police officer, where we ask them to do the most things with the littlest required training. And I was like, it's a dark statement, but I do take your point.
Yeah.
And he would tell these stories like that. I guess there was this dude who was drunk or whatever and fighting somebody. It must have been like after his wedding day or something. He was fighting somebody, and then the officer came up. And I guess, I don't remember how they ended up on the ground, but like, the officer's on top and, he has no fucking training for combat like that. So the drunk dude just like overtakes him and he's on top of him. He's like fucking beating down on him. And the officer can't do shit about it. So he has to pull his gun and shoot the guy. And it's like, Renner's point was, because I guess he's seen this video. It's like, yeah, you can tell he's not trained. He didn't blame the cop because it's like, at that point, your life really was in danger because you clearly can't deal with this motherfucker on top of you. You know what I mean? Like, you already let him power up from the ground and then get on top of you. Now he's beating your ass. He might take your gun and do God knows what. Like, so it's like you got yourself into a situation where now you're in danger, and if this guy gets your gun, everybody else is in danger. So now I don't blame you for shooting him, but it should have been the situation in the first place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's just a part of the whole need for reform, because it needs to be a serious like change on how we're going to do this shit. You shouldn't be that scary. At the same time, the system needs to make it so you're not that scary too. It's just like in the military, you cannot fucking go to war really anymore without extensive training.
I think I remember a line he said, like, what was it, like 6-8 months training for like an 8-week deployment. And then he compared it to like cop training, and I was like, ugh.
Right.
His point was like, you're training for way longer than you were out there for that deployment.
Yeah.
With cops, it's like, year-round job with no training.
Exactly. Like 4 weeks for, what do you say, 4 hours for a job that you're essentially almost 24/7
I can't remember exactly
for?
what the full training included, but he said like 4 hours, and like sometimes only an hour if it would be like actual, non-lethal takedown kind of wrestle training. So it's very, very limited. And I will say before I hop off that he, he runs this program where he tries to train some of these places. I think I can't remember where it was, but they did this sort of experiment with like the police trainees in the academy or whatever. I think they're supposed to train like weekly, and that seemed to work out. So they moved it up to the police department in total. A bunch of them, they like fund those officers training regularly at this jiu-jitsu place that they vetted, and they looked at the numbers. It's like, yeah, way less injury to the officers themselves, way less injury to the people they're handling, shots fired, all that shit, because they're just more confident, I guess, that they can take down a person just with their hands safely.
Yeah.
I don't know what to.
I don't know. Have I ever told you the story about what Michael J. White said? Because I just told this to somebody recently.
I don't think so.
Well, how he wanted to be a cop.
Oh, I'm not aware of that story.
Just for reference, imagine this motherfucker as a cop. Now, he would be properly trained for taking down people, but I wouldn't want that as a cop, because he's fast as fuck, he's big as fuck, he's strong as fuck, he's martially trained, so he can whip your ass, and you're gonna get this guy like firearm training too. He can outrun the bullet he shoots at you and punch you before it hits you in the head. No, he should. He's coming up. Seriously, he was talking about how he grew up as kind of like a bad kid and stuff like that, and he would have run-ins with the law, but the cops in his area were kind of friendly to him. They would kind of talk to him. They would try to push him around towards like the path that he went down with the martial arts training and stuff like that, to find some place to funnel his energy in a positive way. So he said he wanted to be a cop, kind of like out of respect for what they did and taught him. And he wanted to like be kind of like them, I guess, So he said he goes in, he takes the test and all that. And he passes the test like with flying colors, like scores high on everything. And so he thinks he's going to have to be a cop, and they're like, we can't bring you onto the force. So of course he's like, why? So he says eventually somebody brings him, to the side and kind of like lets him know. He's like, look, I'm going to be honest with you. The fact that you scored so high in certain areas, especially in like critical thinking areas, makes it so that you're not considered a good cop, because they don't want people to be able to think too much on their own. They need you to just be able to go along and follow along to a point, like, and not question things. And your scores show that you're not going to be that type of dude. So that's why they don't want you. And I think that's a part of the problem in a lot of cases, because you get these guys who don't seem to have really good critical thinking skills in these situations. Like, again, like, oops, I should have picked my taser, but I thought it was my taser. It was my gun instead. Come on.
I started thinking immediately of a guy who puts his knee on the back of someone's neck and doesn't expect to kill him. And the people who watch, like,
other things like that. Like, what is going through your mind where you see these people recording? You got a crowd of people yelling, screaming, and you're comfortable enough to just sit there. What's in your head? What are you thinking? Are you thinking?
But even his colleagues who just got to watch it, like when you talked about, wanting people who aren't going to question too much.
Right.
Again, got to make sense when you say that.
Yeah, because it's like, right from wrong. What are you doing? And it's one of the problems. It's like it's the culture. It's the culture that they have bred in law enforcement. It's like you get along and you be like with your brotherhood and no questions asked.
Yeah, and the relationship with the public is another exacerbating issue because, especially in the face of all these protests, it's like, who the fuck are they to talk to us like this and say we're this and that? And it's like, it's a very contentious relationship they have increasingly with the public.
Yeah.
I don't quite know how you fix that. I don't know. The reforms you would need are pretty extreme. Like I said, like, we need to refactor the way we do a lot of things, the way we consider a lot of, the way we enforce a lot of laws that are more or less important on the scale of justice there.
Yeah.
I mean, that even leads into things like marijuana. Like the amount of time and energy we put into policing that, it's like, is this really important to really? Is this really worth? Or like drug raids and shit like that. Is it really worth pulling up and shooting everybody over that?
Yeah.
Not saying that, it's a crime to sell drugs and it's a danger to the community and blah, blah, blah. But like, is it an immediate danger? No. Unless they have like a bunch of kids strapped down that they're like getting ready to fill up with drugs or something. Like, it's not an immediate thing that was going to require that.
Yeah. I don't know. There has to be a better way to do things, and I don't know if either of our Pepsi speeches are going to help this problem. So,
well, you abolish the police.
Yeah, cocaine speech is better than the Pepsi speech.
I wonder if people are still on that high horse about the phrasing of defund the police.
Yes. I see it. I follow way too many people. See, I am that person on social media that is definitely a, like, how can I frame this? Is it an accident watcher? Or I know people say it's people watching. I'm a people watcher, but I'm kind of that like toxic people watcher because I like to look at this dumb toxic people sometimes so I could fucking like shake my head and laugh just to see what's the stupid thing. Because like that tweet I sent you, for some reason I forget how I followed that guy. That tweet I sent you about the Wakanda shit. Yeah, I follow him for some reason, and I laugh every time I see some of his stuff because he's abolish the police, because that was the first thing that he said when I believe the little girl got killed. It was like, and you still don't think we should have police or some shit like that. It's like, bruh. Because like someone said on the podcast I listened to, they were like, come on, Your ass got robbed. Who you calling?
The thing is, like, I talked about all these situations where, you know, we don't need a police force per se to enforce them. That really was a situation where a police person should be. There was physical altercation. Somebody had a fucking knife, was probably about to assassinate somebody else. Like,
and that's where I get like the whole like reform thing, which some people were talking when the whole defund the police thing started, where the rational people were saying stuff like, we don't need police to like handle certain situations. Like there's certain situations where you can just call in, you should be able to call in a counselor or something, somebody who's going to be a little less nonsensical in the application of the law.
I think a little more appropriate. It's like with that friend I mentioned who was having like mental health issues. I'm sure the motherfuckers deployed there were not trained to handle mental health issues. So like,
right.
It was a very when that first came up, it was a very thought-provoking period because it made you realize like we really do kind of call them for fucking everything, and we don't train them for any of that shit. So why are they here?
You see two people having a husband and wife having an argument, you know, it's kind of like the cops joke where people, you know, they were like, every time you see like a drunk guy and his wife arguing or some shit like that, you know, but the police are called for that. If two people are arguing, if there's too much noise, we call to complain about noise to the police. They send police to tell you to turn it down. You know, everything we call the fucking police. Like we don't.
A lot of things you could just like automatically fine for. Like, if you're making too much noise, presumably they're not going to arrest you for that. It depends on the situation. I don't know, disturbing the peace, but like. But yeah, like I remember because when I first heard that phrase, I was like, that sounds fucking wild. And then I just thought, like, yeah, there's so much shit we could reorganize. You really could just, you know, for certain traffic violations, like hell, nowadays you have some traffic lights that have like the camera or whatever. They just like, if they see you go too fast or running a light, they just flash a picture and fucking automatically sends you a bill. There's a lot of shit we could just automate, and you don't really need a human to do a lot of the shit we deploy them for. Now that brings up the uncomfortable question, you know, that might also mean we have too many police in general, which only sounds crazy if you, that might sound crazy until you consider that some of the things they're handling could be handled by, I guess, what would have to be new government departments specifically for that kind of shit.
Or I'll give you a perfect example. And this is something that's common. I don't know if you've ever seen it yourself, but I'm sure a lot of us have seen it. When someone pulls over somebody for something like that seems to be serious, and you'll see have someone handcuffed on the sidewalk. You know, you see a cop car pull up and a dude like start this like procedure. See another cop car come in as backup. As time goes on and these people are sitting in handcuffs, car 3 shows up, and car 4, car 5, car 6, and normally it's 2 cops per car. So now you got 12 cops standing around, 2 people in handcuffs, doing absolutely fucking nothing in a situation that's, or hell, the George Floyd thing. Why were there so many of them there for that? He's already pinned on the ground, and you had what, 4 more cops in the situation? Mike.
That was for the counterfeit bill thing?
Yeah.
I hesitate to say this
because there's 4 more cops that are going on trial for George Floyd.
All right. Because I know that dude feels guilty, I guess, for calling the cops, but like, I guess my assumption would have been like, if I thought it was fake, I would just not take it. Or to put it another way, like if I was the police department and you called because somebody might have a fake bill, I would just say, then don't accept it and then hang up the phone. You know, like I guess that's why I'm asking you. Like, maybe I'm missing some context there about.
Well,
like,
and see, that's the thing. Having worked in retail stores, you don't always call the cops, but you do document it. If you got the bill and you know it's fake and they're still there, tell them we can't take it. We can't give you this bill back. If they get unruly over the situation, then you call the cops.
Sure, that's different though. Like that is a
Now,
different problem to
now,
address.
if he got it and George Floyd was leaving, he probably should have just let his manager know, I think this shit is fake. Document it, call the cops, but don't be like he's outside right now. Like, and I think that's part of the thing is like it wasn't calling the cops because they could have handled it. It's dependent on the situation. Calling cops wasn't necessarily the wrong thing, but at the same time, the response. Because
I don't
there's
want to
no
make
other
it.
place to call. Well, again, is that problem of who the fuck do you call? And it's not going to call the fire department. Not going to call EMS.
I guess in this case, I'm not sure that anybody should accept that call, but I don't want to make it sound like he's culpable in any way for what happened there. He's not. It's just like, I guess that's why I was asking you. It's like, what should the police department do with that? I mean, I guess you could say it's like a crime to use fake money, but how much of a crime is it really? Because they called you, so like if they think it's fake money, they obviously didn't accept your fake money. So you did not get any goods for your fake money. So it's not like you stole or something. Like you just didn't get anything. I don't know. I'm willing to accept that it is a crime, but like the fact that I'm debating with myself right now about whether that's something police should even respond to in the first place is kind of my point. Like there is a continuum or a ladder of offense, and like that's like a level 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It certainly does not require 4 officers to come and deal with it.
Yeah, it's just again,
Unless
it's
we're
why
just
we
looking
need
for something
police
for them to do.
And that's the thing. A lot of this shit is just like it's because it's not meted out right. That's the bottom line. They need to like diversify how things are handled, and police shouldn't have to handle everything, especially if you're not going to train police to handle these things. Although I wouldn't mind the police handling if they did have the training, because that would, like how I was saying to you last night about the takedown training, that would definitely weed out a lot of motherfuckers who think that they want to be a cop or who look at the police as a way to get over and do some shit. You know? Because if you actually had to seriously again, to the barbershop thing, you actually had to take months and months and months to actually sit here and learn these things and have to do situational training and to get it down on how you would respond to this, how you're going to 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 respond to it. All the like millions of ways the police have to respond to shit. You know?
And continuous when you're on the job. Because like I mentioned with that little, I don't know if I should call it an experiment, but the jiu-jitsu training, they're doing it weekly. It's not like they trained up to the job and then stopped training. They train regularly, which does not feel like an irrational thing to do when you work regularly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You should keep some skills sharp. I don't know. I thought about the registration thing, for example, because I'd seen somebody make the comment about like, well, just have like a different civilian force that goes out and enforces that. And I'm like, you're not radical enough. Nobody needs to enforce that directly. I mean, send them their automatic fines. Like I said, the state already knows when that shit is out of date. So
yeah. I don't know.
There's some finer points there you could like sharpen up as you go through the system and kind of figure out what to weed out and what to fix. But like my general point is
Fix it.
we're not wanting for things we can do.
Yeah, definitely.
There's actually a lot of things you can do. I would think it should be like a very exciting and interesting time. Like once we finally start to talk about how, yeah, why do we call the police for X, Y, and Z? Why is it police aren't trained to do X, Y, and Z? Like, we've pointed out like a lot of shit that would be inspiring and interesting to deal with. And it's like right there on the fucking table to do.
Yeah. Well, on to happier times, I guess. So Joe Biden has come out and said that by September 11th, 2021, we will no longer have forces in Afghanistan. A very lofty goal, as he is now the third president since Bush to make this claim. And he may be the third president to actually fail at this. Or will he be the first? Will this be, third time's the charm?
I will say it certainly wasn't a loose declaration. I think he said by September 11th. He gave a hard date, and it wasn't based on. How should I put this? It wasn't contingent upon some state of Afghanistan. You know what I mean? Like, as we reach this milestone, we'll pull out this many troops to start doing that. Like, he just pretty much just said, like, yeah, fuck it. Here's the end date. Get out. I think that makes it more likely because it doesn't seem to be contingent upon anything. There's no condition that must be met before you go, and he gave a date on it. And the date is soon, so we'll have our answer relatively soon.
Yeah.
I'll go out on a limb and say, yeah, but I guess we'll see. Though how the world is, anything could happen. Like I don't want to speak anything into the ether, but say America was attacked or something like that, that could easily change the political dynamic of a move like pulling the troops out.
So I've heard an interesting conversation on the podcast that kind of mirrors kind of my sentiments. And they were talking about how the thing is to pull these troops out, hard left liberals are going to have to be able to live with certain realities. And there are certain realities that they haven't been able to live with, which is part of the reason why we're in this situation. That on top of just generally, it's always a fucked up situation with the United States when it comes to the things that they do as far as quote unquote policing the world. This is what they were saying in the podcast was this, like, know this, as soon as we leave Afghanistan, there'll probably be some more fucked up shit that will happen. They're going to still have the same conflicts that they've had all these decades because it's a part of the culture. The Taliban is a part of the culture for some. It's just the way it is in that world. And, to further their point, it's kind of like with the things that go on here. We can't expect Europe, Asia, and so on and so forth to fix the problems that we have here. The racism, the economic divide, the religious issues, all that. They can't fix that. Same way we can't necessarily fix their problems. It's going to be up to them to want to fix their problem. Now, we can help them, of course. in any way that we can. But at the end of the day, certain things are just going to be sadly that way because that's the way that they are until they have that social change.
Yeah, the like you said, it is a thing that you're going to have to accept because eventually we're going to get some kind of story from there. Maybe even before we finish, we do that move to pull our troops back. Maybe some atrocity happens and
Yeah, because
you open
remember
up
the Syria shit that happened right near the end of Obama's thing when somebody bombed something in Syria? It was like, well, how can we leave these people and abandon them? It's like
the ethics around our global community is kind of odd because, say another Hitler, maybe that's not a good example. Like, it would be weird if in one of our ally nations, for example, they started committing extreme atrocities and we just didn't do anything about it just because it wasn't us. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't even know how to talk about this issue. Generally, you have some sort of like moral obligation to your fellow man, and your fellow man extends beyond the borders of your country. But I don't know how you deal with that fact in practice.
yeah, it's going to be always like the foreign policy thing is always going to be a hard pill to swallow. I don't care who you are as president. You're not going to get that one right because the world is a dynamic place. There are certain things that you can kind of, you know, kind of have a hard line on, but at the same time, as they said in the podcast, being the president kind of works like a monkey's paw when it comes to foreign policy. You fix the one thing, or just in general, anyway. You fix one thing, you bring up an issue somewhere else. You know, so it's going to be hard to like find the right solution. And I don't, me personally, I don't think that it is like I'm not one of those people who think that we are obligated to fix the world because we are considered the biggest, baddest.
I don't know. Because there's also like weird issues of sovereignty. Like, do we have the right to go in and tell people they're doing shit wrong and blah, blah, blah? It's like, well, on the global stage, like if there was a country that just were killing, it's kind of hard to describe because there are countries that do. I mean, every country has like some kind of atrocity going on. It's like,
yeah, because they brought up the Miramar thing.
Right.
And they were like, hey, we can go in there, we can help, but it's like, should we or shouldn't we? And that's where the debate comes.
Like,
it's
shouldn't
like,
we?
oh, but that's the thing. It's like, shouldn't we? Okay, we go over there, we do our thing. And then say an extremist group rises up and it's like, see, y'all brought America here and blah, blah, blah. So when we leave, that extremist group, like, we're going to come and change things back so we can be an independent. And it starts, it's like, sometimes doing the right thing ain't always doing the right thing. Is a like quote I've heard before. And I totally understand that quote because it's like you are kind of damned if it's oddly enough like the picture that I have up. You try to do things in a clear, logical way in which you don't just consider your position, but you consider the positions of everybody. But still somebody's going to have a problem with that position because they want you to focus on that position. Or they want you to do this. So it's a fucking weird it's just tough. Like how do you like? Because what has having troops there really fixed? You can make that argument.
Well,
You can make an argument that having troops there has fixed a lot. You can make an argument that it has caused some more problems or it hasn't fixed much. It's just all the fuck over the place. Like,
I don't know.
or hey, again, going back to the picture, remember the thing we were talking about earlier about the word colonizers? You know, you can make a case that by colonization has caused a lot of issues. And it has caused a lot of issues. But then people also can make the argument by like leaving, they cause even more issues. And yeah, they've caused even more issues. So should we go back and colonize them to fix those issues that were put after we left? Or just like there's no way some problems just can't be fixed. It's a weird some problems just can't be fixed.
Because sometimes there's this sentiment that if it didn't happen in your house, it's not your business. And I don't think we really want to behave that way on any scale. So like if you hear somebody screaming next door, you probably want to do something about it. You know what I mean?
And it's
although
funny,
I'm sure a lot of us
brought
would
up that kind of scenario too. But yeah.
But like so I treaded toward Hitler earlier for a different reason, but let me go back there. I'm sure a lot of people would argue that we should have started intervening in that situation earlier than we did before we were attacked. And I don't know that it would make sense to just be like, well, not our country. Maybe we'll. I guess you could make the argument that like if we go over there and fuck with Germany at the time while this shit was rising, you know, we're violating their sovereignty, we're running the risk of having a worse regime pop up in their place. But I don't know that it's appropriate either to say that we should just have not done anything about it. If anything, we waited too long to act. We only really had to because we got some shit ourselves.
Yeah.
That's why I say like there is some level of obligation to ensure the safety of everyone on the planet. Even though we operate in terms of countries, like we are the earth. You know what I mean? Like,
but then it always goes to like, okay, so you react. What's the level of reaction? Like, where's the line? How much
the line's already got to cross once you start to react, because like I said, like it is already kind of a problem to even undermine a country's sovereignty like that.
And and I agree, but especially now in this social media era, like everybody is going to fight every fucking problem in every fucking way. So it's just gonna like make it even worse.
You know, as far as our presence there in the Middle East over the years, it's like once we got there, that was another complication too. It was like trying to leave. I remember, you know, you'd hear people talk about like, oh, we shouldn't have gone over there, blah, blah, blah. Part of the issue is like, if you ever play a game of chess, you can't be thinking about what you should have done 20 moves ago. The board has a current state that it's in right now. It doesn't matter if you shouldn't have moved your rook this way or your knight that way 20 moves ago. Right now, here are the pieces as they are. We can only move forward from here. So when people say like, well, we shouldn't have invaded, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, we did, and now we're here. And that's like, we have to make our decisions based on the state of the world currently, not what it ought to have been. So that is another complication too, is like, even if we made a mistake, the mistake is made, and now you have to deal with the fact that the mistake is part of the world in your decision making. That's not an argument that we should have, you know, I'm not trying to make like a sunk cost argument. They're like, oh, we've already put in all this work, blah, blah, blah. But it made the issue more complicated. It's not like we were, you know, back here trying to decide whether we're going to intervene or not. We did. And now it's a whole different thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just there's just really no fucking there's no real good answer. Like, but pulling out, you know, you gotta be willing to deal with the consequences.
Somebody asked, do you think we will be, or do you think there's going to be a story that comes out of there that are going to make the public criticize Biden for doing it? Like, how could you leave those people, blah, blah, blah.
I don't know. Honestly, it would not surprise me if Biden is the one to do it. And the reason I say this is because he's already said that he's a transitional president. So, and me and you spoke about this before. I feel like that statement is a statement which to me says he's not necessarily looking to be around more than 4 years anyway. Or if whatever he's doing, he's just setting it up for the next person and to make sure that like whoever's next has the tools that they need. So that being said, if he's not planning on sticking around for long, just fucking do the thing, rip the band-aid off, and just take the onus. Like I would like to think that at his age, at the point that he is in his life, I feel like he should think that feel as if his legacy has already been cemented enough to where he could take this L.
I'm thinking this might be a bit cynical, but I don't think it, even if some atrocity does happen over there, I don't think it will be that bad of a political blowback for a few reasons. One, assuming this happens like within the next few years, we're already hyper focused on our own issues, like in America, specifically around, say, police violence, racism in general, largely toward Black people. That is already kind of holding our cultural attention right now. So I think a lot of people just won't notice what's happening abroad there. And two, I think we're just a bit tired of thinking, like we've been there for decades, term after term. It's been a long time at this point. I think people are just mentally exhausted of even thinking about the Middle East as an issue. So even if something bad happens there, I don't know that it's going to cause that much of an issue.
Well, and here's another point that I forgot to bring up too. I think now that we're moving towards this whole, like with the talk about the Green New Planet deal and all of this stuff, and his whole, we want to make sure like the government has all electric cars by 2025 or whatever it is, and like giving people more incentive to get electric cars and moving away from fossil fuels and stuff like that. I think part of this big push of pushing from fossil fuels kind of makes it a little bit more palatable for people to just be like, fuck it. Because politically speaking, if we do start moving away from these ties to oil, stuff like that, beyond the whole saving people thing, and I hate to say it this way, but beyond the whole saving people thing, there'll be less resistance for people on the right side to be like, no, we need to like reserve our power there. They'll be like, yeah, we can just move away from that. Yeah, but then again, it's the political right, so I'm assuming too much. Yeah.
Well, I was about to say like the gas industry, oil and gas industry, might start lobbying and pushing their political friends to start sending out some messaging saying, "Hey, fuck this, we need oil." Maybe that's a bit extreme of an interpretation, but often when certain industries are affected, they will start to disseminate some cultural political messaging to kind of move the public in their favor. So I could see your point, but those industries have a shit ton of money, and with enough time and effort, you can start to sway people's opinions. Yeah. Even if you're just disseminating bullshit, like it just needs to be around enough for people to kind of latch onto it. Especially in this kind of hyper partisan era where you could pretty much just say like, man, those liberals, they really hate gas. And that'll be probably enough for some people to be like, yeah, fuck liberals. Gas is cool. I drink gas every day.
Yeah.
Maybe too cynical, but
yeah, it's one of those things. Like it's hard to decipher, but somebody's gonna have to do it, and somebody's gonna just have to be like, I think some of us as liberals are gonna have to kind of ease back on the idea that we can't fix everything. No matter how hard we try. And I think 20 years is a good enough hard try, don't you?
I mean, what did we try making them a state?
Oh, why would we want that? It'll just become another.
My point is,
it'll become another Democratic stronghold for the liberals. Can't have that.
I'm almost certain they'd be Republican, but that aside, I mean, maybe we were too soft. We're like, oh, we need to, help them erect their own government, blah, blah, blah. Maybe we should have been more imperial and just said, now you're America.
That would have been just another bunch of problems. Because remember, colonization. We can't be, we colonizers already.
I'm sorry, it's dark humor, but
no, it's the sad thing. It's a sad truth though. Like you say, it's dark humor, but it's actually some sad truth to that. I mean, what do you think Guam and Samoas are, if not places that we patriated from from Japan during the war and shit, right?
I don't know. I just started thinking about is 20 years enough? I was like, maybe we. The thought just popped in my head, like maybe we didn't go hard enough. Like maybe we weren't extreme enough. We should have just gone all the way and said, "Fuck it, we're not erecting a new government for you. We're the government. We'll make you a state, and put a big red, white, and blue fence around your area. Now you're one of us."
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I say Guam and Samoa, but I should be saying the Philippines because. The Philippines used to be a Spanish colony.
Used to be.
Yeah, until we beat Spain. In the Spanish-American War, and they conceded it to us, and then it was a U.S. colony. So it's like we've done this before. We've quote unquote liberated people and taken them over.
We should just take over everything, and then we don't have to worry about this. We won't be. Fucking with other countries' sovereign rights. We'll just be one big country.
So the United Earth of America is what you want?
Yeah. I mean, the problem is
y'all kept acting like UEA.
Imperialism was wrong. The problem with imperialism
is that nobody took it too far. Nobody took it far enough. Is that what it is?
We didn't finish. We left imperialism half done. Oh, this is gonna come back. Me saying that's gonna come back to haunt me one day.
Well, at least it's a hard line. It's not a Pepsi speech, so you have that.
Alexander the Great's biggest problem was that he didn't finish completing his empire, and now we're just a bunch of fucking countries dicking around.
Yeah, goddamn independence and freedom. But no, it's it's gonna be interesting. If it happens, I just want to see what the fallout's gonna be.
I'm imagining the court. Like, I'm gonna be in court for something stupid one day, and they're gonna be like talking about my character, and they're gonna pull up that quote where I said,
Right.
"The imperial pigs didn't finish the job they should have." It's like, fuck. Can't walk that back out of context.
No, there's Lindsey Graham's going to use it against you in your race for presidency.
It would probably use it for me. He'd be like, "He's right. America should rule everything. What are you talking about? This is the problem. We're too disjointed. We gotta fucking communicate. We should just have one leader, America." I'd be like, no, I was somewhat kidding. But at this point, I do think we should just do it and see. Like, if it is the case that something happens over there that's so fucking heinous that we cannot abide by it and we go back, then that is what happens. But until then, we're what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. September 11th is a ways away, so we'll see.
Did it have to be that date in particular?
Yeah, I know it's a weirdly symbolic date.
I didn't feel like it had to be symbolic. It's like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe when we get there, people will be like, "Yeah, fuck it, we're done." But I was like, God, any other date on the calendar would have been.
I mean, but it's like I said, it's weirdly symbolic because hey, it's the day 20 years ago that started us down that path. So
I could be more positive about it. It's
so
a
maybe
celebration.
that's what they're thinking. It's
We're
a
done.
like positive trend as well. Like now we're probably done with it. I don't know.
I mean, in fairness, a lot of people do want to get out of there. So it's not like the idea that it's a bit celebratory is insane. God. So many things are happening. We're talking about infrastructure. People are getting their cootie shots. This Biden guy wants to give everybody internet and give kids money and fucking
I know
save the planet.
that's the thing though, but we're getting
Get out of Afghanistan.
We're getting progression. Like that's the weird thing. It's like for all the arguments people want to make and complain about, there is a level of progression that we haven't seen in a few years. So
it is weird. It's like, I don't know that we should talk about it too much, but because I think we're still in the early stages of it, but I don't think we've talked that much about the infrastructure shit they're trying to go with, because there's so much other shit they're doing with their vaccine rollouts and their kid tax or tax deductibles.
Kitty
or
tax
like,
money.
Yeah, Biden books.
Yeah, I know. It's strange.
They pass one major bill and they're like, "Oh, we can pass bills again." Like, fuck. I forgot to say that. I did get my cootie shot. I don't know, maybe we said it at the beginning. But I say that to say I got it and I'm not sick. So if you guys are hesitant, you should get it. I also didn't get superpowers though. So if you're hoping for that, probably not going to happen. Well, I got it yesterday. I could still develop superpowers, to be fair. We'll see.
Let me know if you do. I got mine, so I don't have any powers.
Weren't all the black people supposed to get superpowers not that long ago?
Yeah, the moon or some shit was supposed to. It was some day where the moon was supposed to do that shit.
This will be it. But yeah, everybody get your stuff. I don't know. I just hesitated because when I went out to get it and like, I just went there. I was around people. I got my shot, all that stuff. My mom talked to me about like, visiting or whatever because she got hers. I was like, I started getting this like weird unease where I was like, Is the world starting to return to normal? Am I ready for that? It's been like a year plus. Do I know how to interact? You know, somebody was asking me like when my job is going back to work, and I was like, I don't know, man, but fuck, it could happen. Could it? Like, part of me just accepted that we'll be working from home forever now that we're on the. I see going back to the office on the horizon. I'm like, ew. When's the last time I really interacted with humans in person? Can I still do that? I wasn't really that good at it before.
Yeah.
Or that, what was it? I wonder if, I guess Black Widow is still going to be in the theaters, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gonna come out simultaneously. Theaters in.
I don't know if it was that or some other movie, but I started thinking like, when am I going to be comfortable to go back to movie theaters again? Do I want to? But like, if I wanted to, when would I be comfortable?
I'm fine with no movie theaters.
When would I sit in a restaurant again? Damn it, Bye, this is all happening too fast. You need to create a new bill to ease us back into regular life.
Yeah. You don't want to be out there with the people with the cooties. Trust me.
I'm waiting to see that too, because we've been steadily vaccinating a lot of people, and I'm like, certainly we're going to hit a point where we're just down to the assholes who don't want to do it at all. And then what are we going to do?
Good question.
I guess part of my question is, how many of them will there be? Will there be a significant amount where we're like, all of a sudden, like because they do like the daily vaccine number or whatever, like we see that kind of peter down, and then all of a sudden it's like, we've only vaccinated 60% of the people fully, and what are the rest of you guys doing? And they're like, we're Republicans.
Yeah. We can't. That's another story. Let's just get to the final story and then let's go. DC statehood. No, DC
shit.
Statehood.
I'm just
the important fact, sir. We have to get to the most important story of all, which is DC taxhood. I mean, statehood taxhood. Jesus, DC statehood. So the House agreed 216 to 208, which means it's pretty much a straight party line type of thing. That DC should become the 51st state. Now it goes to the Senate, where it's pretty much going to die because, come on, between Joe Manchin and sexy Joe Manchin, I can't think of her name. Kristen Sinema. Yeah, it was like, what's the name of the girl who dresses like a fucking like prep teen? Kristen Sinema. Yeah. You know, between them two, I don't expect that shit to pass, especially since the Republicans think that this is all just a ploy to give Democrats 2 more Senate seats, which I find hilarious how they just naturally say that because they know that nobody likes them in DC. So they just pretty much concede that instead of trying to figure out a way of how to win DC.
They're not, if they were interested in winning anybody, they wouldn't be doing all this voter suppression.
Exactly.
So,
like, they have no idea how to fucking, they don't know how to run elections. They don't know how to do anything. They really don't know how to do anything except for obstruct and just twiddle their fingers. And just like blame. Like, they just have no purpose. I'm sorry. I know it sounds may sound too hardline, liberal, whatever, but come on. Common sense demands that we recognize that these people don't like to work at all. And that's a problem when you're trying to run a country.
So
That's a job that you seek.
the, if that does sound a bit partisan or something, really think about all the crap I was just jokingly talking about, all the initiatives the current administration wants to do, and then ask yourself, what is it the other side wants to do instead? Can you even answer that question? Do you know what they want to do? I'd venture to say the answer is no, like because they don't really want to do anything.
Yeah.
They just got to keep you embroiled in culture wars, talking about shit like Dr. Seuss and shit nobody cares about, complaining about the amount of money that's spent. Which it's not to say you can't talk about it, but just really stop and ask yourself the question: if what he said just now seems too partisan, what is the other side's agenda? Can you explain it to me?
Yeah, we're spending too much money on people like healthcare and making sure people aren't broke and hungry.
Disaster
And
relief, infrastructure
disaster relief. Try what we're
rebuilding.
Like, why are we trying to fix roads? Make it easier for people to commute. Make it safer for people to commute. Give money to kids? What? So families can feed their fucking kids? The fuck is wrong with you? Like the things of the education. Why are we spending so much money on educating our people? Like the things that they complain about. It's just like, so what are we supposed to do with the money?
Creating jobs to help fix the environment. Two birds, one stone. Like,
right.
Even if you want to argue some of this stuff is inefficient or misguided or blah, blah, blah. But my only point really is that they are at least things one wants to do. Like,
yeah.
And if you can respond to that and tell me what it is Republicans want to do, then maybe I'll rescind my point. But
and this is why the whole DC argument is so fucking dumb when it comes to the whole like this is just them padding Senate seats. No, like you have taxpaying citizens within your country that have really no fucking rights other than to pay taxes, and they like got to like I heard someone say on the podcast how it used to be a rule where for you to vote in DC, you had to pick whether or not you wanted to like vote as a Maryland resident or a Virginia resident. It's the stupidest thing in the world. And apparently somebody on the Republican side actually suggested that we should go back to that instead of giving them statehood. That way they could feel like they have a say. It's like, but it's like, no. Like what? How is that supposed to, how is that different? Like, because the thing is, with statehood comes benefits. Like maybe the city can get taken care of a little bit better instead of having to beg the federal government year. You know how our public transportation system works in this area? Every year, they have to go to a federal committee and explain to them why they need money to operate.
It's 2021 and we're like I just talk about all the things we could be doing, police reform and all that shit. And we haven't even settled on the states.
Yeah.
We've been a country for this long. We haven't even settled on the fucking state.
And like people try to make the population argument. It's funny, again, listening to the podcast, I was laughing because they were pointing out like, Washington, D.C. has more people in it than Montana or Wyoming. Like states like that, the Dakotas, they don't have like what was it that they said? Montana only had something like less than 400,000 people or something statewide, something ridiculous like that.
That sounds pleasant.
We have like almost 700,000 people. We're closer to 1 million than a whole state in the city alone.
Oh God. We talked about this the other day, and semi-jokingly asked, like, instead of making y'all a state, why don't we just not be states and just be one country, majority besides.
But I mean, it's happened. And that's another argument about the statehood. This is why it's a funny thing that you bring that up again, because I forgot about that argument too. Like, people are like, it's too small to be a state or anything. Like, you've heard of the country Singapore, right?
Yeah.
How many cities are in Singapore?
I do not know.
Yes, you do. Singapore.
Wait, what?
Singapore is Singapore.
You challenged me on my weakness, geography.
Singapore is Singapore. That's it. That's all there is to the country.
Really?
Yes. Look it up.
No idea. Holy shit. Yeah, it's just Singapore.
That's it.
It's.
But I'll give you even a better argument. You know what's a country that has its own sovereignty? The Vatican City. You have it, and there's less than like 100,000 people in the Vatican City, but it's an autonomous country. Monaco is another example of like a city state that's just a country. And if it was left to itself, I think Hong Kong would be another one. So
I remember when I brought this up to you. Because I was thinking about, like, states like Montana and that, where it's like the border drawing is more or less arbitrary. It's not like it really relates to anything. It's not like we have drawn the borders in such a way that it evenly slices up the population into different areas. And even if we did, that divide would be sort of arbitrary anyway. So it's like, that's why I just gotta say, like, fuck it, simplify it. Let's stop worrying about it. Let's just not erase the borders. We're just America. I can't take it anymore. So it's like, the way we divide it is kind of stupid anyway. Because if you want to make the argument that, that place, DC, shouldn't have statehood because it's so small or its population size or whatever, I'd be like, redistribute Montana then so that it kind of bleeds into the other surrounding states. Because it might be large geographically, but it's not dense population. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what is the criteria we are using to decide what a state is?
Borders, and like I told you a couple of weeks ago, just to be something to use as a means to give people certain powers in their way, like, slavery. It's part of the reason a lot of things are placed up the way they are is because of slavery. People wanted to make sure that certain territories would be around and have enough like population and big enough area to count on their side. It's like, why do we need two Carolinas?
I think when you brought this up to be a conversation, I think I said, just instead of making DC a state, just merge the Carolinas back. So like, no, I said, because you sent me a tweet where somebody mentioned we have two Carolinas and two Dakotas or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not really an argument to make DC a state so much as it is to not have two Carolinas and two Dakotas. Like, put them back. So it's like, you're not convincing me to make them a state. You're just convincing me we have too many states. I don't want 51 now. Now I just want 48.
Yeah, at least then they'll have at least 1 million people living in the state instead of like what they have.
This is the problem we have in America now. We don't know how to draw maps and shit.
Yeah, like there's more potatoes in Idaho than there's people. Come on. It's weird.
I mean, that's not fair. Potatoes are small.
Okay, I'll give you that. But I'm sure there's an animal that I can argue that there's, I'm sure there's probably more horses in Wyoming than there are people.
That's the point. Is like, the state lines are super fucking arbitrary. They just kind of are, regardless of how many people live there.
Yeah. So yeah, the
we're talking
population
about
thing is
how
dumb.
DC doesn't have representation and shit. The concern about adding a couple more Senate seats for DC. It's like, well, I live in California. It has a shit ton of people. We have the same number of Senate seats everybody else fucking has. Is that right? Like,
Exactly.
Our representation structure is kind of that's kind of why I half jokingly say get rid of the states, because our structure of representation is not proper to begin with. So it's like,
Yeah, the fact that you have to have this even number is why DC would get 2. So what are you?
and because things pass through the House and then the Senate is powerful in a very unique way. So it's like it's already not as representative as a government as I think people want to pretend it is.
Yeah.
So,
and I think I made the argument.
I'm not worried about this. It's like,
I think I made the argument to you earlier too. Is like if they're worried about race too, because DC had always been known as Chocolate City, but like I was telling you, there's been these like gentrification kind of movement, so it's less chocolate than you think. Now would be the best time for Republicans to have DC be a state, because maybe you have a better chance of appeal, since you seem to have no interest in trying to appeal to Black people at all, which you can, because Black people are some of the more conservative people, in this country, if you think about it. But you refuse to do it because reasons? I don't know. Like, well, now you have a city that's more of a mix of people. So you should have a fighting chance, or at least you would think you would have a fighting chance, even though 92% of DC voted for Biden. But that's just because, unfortunately for them, it's sad that the city where the government rests is the city that, or the place that overwhelmingly does not fuck with one particular side. But I mean, if you try a little harder to be nice to these people and appeal to them, they'll swing your way.
Nope, I've decided we're passing a bill. No more state lines. We're one country. No more Senate. I'll have to rethink how we do the House.
But no, they will kill you if you do the no more state lines thing. Because again, like I said, it goes back to stuff like slavery and voting things. Because you get rid of Montana, then you get rid of those like fucking electoral college votes that they can get from Montana. Because if you get rid of states, then what's the point of electoral votes? Then you just have to go to a general election where it's just the population. That ain't gonna work. That's not gonna work for them. So no, you can't get rid of states, bro.
I mean, I would say this. Can we at least get rid of the Senate? Because it's, similar thing that was erected supposedly to give smaller states, shall we say, a bit of power, so they weren't just steamrolled by the larger states. So we're like, come on, it's the same sort of thing.
No, this is why we get
because it was the southern states.
But no, this is why we get rid of voting rights, because remember, every state has 2 seats, and currently the 2 seats in Georgia are blue. So that kind of blue is blowing up in their face. So that you need to find another way. Yeah,
I want to look at how other countries do this now, because I'm like, this is such a goddamn clusterfuck.
I know.
We have these people who don't have any fucking representation. Our representation system itself is fucking cracked. State lines are ridiculous. Like, oh my God.
But if DC becomes a state,
yes, if we grant DC the statehood it so desperately desires.
But no, statehood comes with a lot of things, because there's federal funding. At least you will guarantee yourself federal funding. You wouldn't have to every year go up to a budgeting committee and explain to them why you need money to run your city for different things like public transportation, police enforcement, and all of that stuff. Like,
I'm not against it. I'm just
yeah, I know. But I'm just saying, like, this is a part of the statehood thing that would happen. It's like makes sense, but apparently not to certain people. I don't know.
Actually, you know what? I am against it because I don't like the number 51. That's an odd number. 50 was nice and clean.
Cool. Now we make Puerto Rico a state. There's your even number, sir.
Yeah.
Come on.
50 is such a nice. It's just a nice number. Can we? All right. You know how I said we should have just made Afghanistan a state? What if we just go ahead and conquer like a bunch more countries and just make them states till we have 100?
I mean, if you want to make all the territories states, then you'll have 56. Then all you need to do is just find 4 more places to agree to be a part of America. And
I don't like the number.
Get to the even 60.
I think we need to keep conquering it till we get to at least till we get
I know
to
what you
100
want.
even.
Oh, so now we got to get to an even 100. Can't just have 50. Now we need an even 100. You know, that means stripes won't fit on the flag. So
that would be a nice clean number to have on we could just redesign the flag to just be a bunch of stars.
Sorry, stars. Because there's 50 stars, right?
Yeah, that would be the perfect opportunity to redesign the flag. It was getting tired anyway. Like,
no, you could have it 51. Just make it Captain America flag and just put 1 star. You don't need 50.
Oh God.
There you go. Problem solved. Turn it into like the Captain America A. I really feel like that's a good thing to like promote. Make the Captain America A the U.S. flag from now on.
I guess it's better than what I just promoted, which was conquering another 40-something states
or
countries, I should say, states. Purely to have a more pleasing number.
I mean, how many states does Canada have? Because you can just take over Canada, and then find out how many states does Mexico have, and take over America, and make the entire North American continent just the United States of America. Bam. There you go. That'll satiate your blood thirst there.
We could just take over South America and Canada. And if somehow it still doesn't add up to 100, we could just split up Canada into different sections. Make it work.
No, that's what I'm saying. You don't have to go to South America. You can just get Mexico and Canada.
Yeah, but they're there anyway.
But they are separated into states, like Canada has, Manitoba, Ottawa, all that stuff. So boom, they're already separated in states.
We shouldn't be talking about this. We're talking about how we're going to divvy up our spoils of war.
I'm trying to help you feel better about it. I'm fine with the uneven number. I'm fine with 51.
I'm trying to run for office
with
one
52.
Day.
I'm even more better with 56, or leave it to 51 and let fucking like all these other countries be on their own, like they should be. Run themselves.
I'm trying to run for office one day, and now I got to explain why I was talking about how to divvy up Canada after we take it over. Oh fuck.
Yeah, well,
I will say that those other situations like Puerto Rico, though, that I don't know that that's
Trump
as easy.
can do all the things that he did and still become president, you're fine.
I would just say, because I know some of the territories we have do not uniformly agree that they want to be states. I know a lot of people there probably want to be a state, but I'm sure there's some opposition to consider. I guess the simple answer is just like let them vote if they want to be a state, and then just accept them if they say yeah. That's how we do it. We just ask other people, do you want to be America? And if they agree, then that's not conquering. That's an invitation. Yeah. That didn't sound as good out loud as it did in my head. That still sounds incriminating. Never mind. I was kidding, probably. So, let me get off my dictator bent here and just say, like you said, it passed the House. Do you think there's any chance that passes the Senate? Because I don't. So
I don't either. Like I said, you got Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema. They're gonna fuck it anyway. Yeah.
Could you even? How do you pass? Like, what votes would you need? Because even if they did like the 50 in the tiebreaker, does that work? Can they do that?
It gets it passed, but then you still have the whole like they could try to block it bullshit, the filibuster thing. That's why the 60 votes is always so important, because they don't want it to be held up This is why I like, oh god, our government is so fucking dumb. Like, if it passed, it should be law. That's how it should work. But fuck, life don't work like that, unfortunately, for some reason.
I had forgotten about the super filibustery super majority. Fair enough. I don't know. It just seemed like such a radical thing. Like, can we just say like, yeah, they're a state, and then 51 votes and we're good? Filibuster aside. But you know, the mere fact that I think that, I think is indicative of the fact that we don't move fast enough as a country. Because I'm like, we can't do big things like that, can we? We're not allowed to just do major things if we want to do them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how that goes. I don't have any hope for it, but if we made DC a state, though, we should rename it.
What should it
District
be?
of Columbia is a dumb name, or whatever they call themselves.
Oh, I mean, oh my god! See, this is what shows when it comes to being someone who went to school in DC and then lived in Maryland most of their lives. You forget exactly why it's called the District Columbia. But there is a reason. Now I'm going to look at it. Why is it called the District of Columbia? On September 9th, 1791, three commissioners overseeing the Capitol's construction named the city in honor of President Washington. So that's why I already knew that part. That's why it's called Washington, because it's named after George Washington. Of course, everybody knows that. Same day, the federal district was named Columbia, a feminine form of Columbus, which was a poetic name for the United States commonly in use at that time. So it probably has something to do with fucking Columbus, if I recall my history right. Which,
All you're telling me
is
is
dumb.
that we
Okay, I
name
can
a
see
state.
it as dumb.
All right, so I think that should be a requirement.
And you know
if
what?
we
I
make
just
them a
thought
state.
about it. DC actually does have two cities, technically.
D and C.
No, Georgetown used to be its own like city in Maryland, and it was absorbed. So Georgetown was a city. So there you go. Call it DC and make Georgetown the capital. Bam.
We have global warming going on, and we have to figure out how to fucking draw state lines.
It's already been drawn. DC is the best state line because it's pretty much in a natural fucking like kite shape. Come on. You gotta admit, it's the fucking best. Can't get around.
On that note, if we're gonna do this anyway, we should reconsider like the shapes of
better than the
states.
fucking like penis that is your home state, sir. Fucking phallic symbol.
Oh, we are powerful. Oh. Yeah, we should just kind of like make a big machine, kind of shave off certain parts of the country, Florida and Texas, make it, kind of a square rectangle kind of thing, and then we can just evenly divide into like a bunch of smaller rectangles.
All right, let's stop because we're going to like get into even more trouble. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's it. We're not going to get into the Falcon or Winter Soldier conversation because I just sent you a tweet that furthers my whole like, wow, black people just really want to be mad.
Oh, oh, but this time it was like an actual person.
I mean, hey.
I was just willing to accept everybody else was just a dumb Twitter mark, but somebody with a check next to their name. Oh God. All right. Did we talk about WandaVision either?
We're going to do the WandaVision podcast. Guys, we're going to do a WandaVision podcast. And then I guess we're going to do a Falcon and Winter Soldier podcast.
I just say that because Loki is coming up. So
our virtual. Well, we got a month and about a month and a half.
I'm just saying we're falling behind.
We had a month and a half though. We have a month and a half, so we can actually knock those two out in between.
With the way Marvel is going, you know, they might be like surprise Squirrel Girl, and like next week, you never know.
Okay, well,
Just
we don't have
it.
to do a podcast for that one.
What?
Nah, I think we were fine without the Squirrel Girl conversation. That's more than well. But remember, guys, if you actually want to be hopeful or have some optimism that maybe the world can change, you're a fucking idiot. And you need to stop drinking the Pepsi. Okay? Just remember that. More importantly, if you're a person of color and you feel that way, you're fucking sellout. So just remember that. Remember that. That's at least that's what the like people who are like smarter than you and are more conscious than you are say. Okay?
Yeah, don't even bother adding any context to that. I think that's the perfect note to end on. So.
Yep, it is. It is. Anyway, you guys, thank you for listening and watching as always. I just thought of like something I could put as a title. And yeah, I'm gonna be very shameful with this, and I don't give a fuck. But anyway, thank you for watching and listening to The Reason Reborn. I'm gonna go and be like a horrible person and not give a fuck. And I hope you guys are well in all of that. Drink Pepsi, and be at peace. No goodbye, sir.
I can't.
You don't want to get involved in this. I understand. All right, guys, we're out of here. See you next time on The Reason Reborn. Peace.
Jesus, 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 Jesus.